During the time the Korean War engulfed the peninsula in fire and smoke, there were moments when the boundary between the brutal reality of the battlefield and the inexplicable became chillingly fragile, as if the war not only tore apart the land, but also fractured the very line between the seen and the unseen. In March 1951, the war had raged for a year and tension permeated everything. The location was near Chorwon, North Korea, about 60 miles north of Seoul, an area later known as the Iron Triangle, a fiercely contested land soaked in blood and unsolved military mysteries. United Nations forces were pushing the Chinese army northward after recapturing Seoul. Amidst that chaos, Private First Class Francis P. Wall and his regiment were tasked with evacuating Korean villagers from a nearby settlement. Suddenly, the unit's artillery began shelling the area intensely, a routine barrage in war, yet it became the prelude to an extraordinary event. It was then, amidst the roar of artillery shells, that they witnessed it. A massive circular object enveloped in a strange orange light floated down from the nearest mountainside, heading directly toward the village, engulfed in smoke and fire. The soldiers, already hardened by the sights of war, were suddenly stunned, utterly bewildered by this irrational appearance. What was it? Enemy aircraft? A new type of weapon, or something entirely different? Then, as if sensing their presence, the object abruptly changed direction, flying back up the mountain, heading straight for the unit's position. Private First Class Wall, in a drilled reflex, quickly turned to his lieutenant, urgently requesting permission to open fire with his rifle. As soon as the first rounds were fired, the object responded. But it wasn't conventional munitions. There was no sound of impacting metal, no trace of ballistics. Instead, a horrifying sensation spread. One soldier screamed in agony. "My skin feels like it's burning." An invisible energy? An unbelievable weapon? Or was it a sign of a presence beyond human comprehension during the dawn of the Cold War? A time when reports of anomalous aerial phenomena and unexplained energy signatures occasionally surfaced, shrouded by the veil of military secrecy and the fear of experimental technology. Stories like this are akin to entering a dense fog, a fog of skepticism and primal fear. This fog presents a choice: either bravely step through it, confronting whatever lies within, or turn back, seeking the false security of the known. Beyond that fog lie stories that defy all explanation, running completely counter to what we consider reality. It is an uncertain space where reality and absurdity coexist, where truth and superstition blend into a single terrifying entity. And only you, the listener, can discern for yourself what is credible as you step through what we call the fog of the unknowable. Isolated environments under extreme stress, like battlefields, have long been fertile ground for reports of encounters or phenomena that blur the lines between reality, psychological strain, and the truly inexplicable. Speaking of the inexplicable in the sky, recent headlines buzzed about an unidentified flying object drifting over the United States. As it turned out, it was merely an overinflated balloon. An interesting story, but hardly frightening. Let us return to the fog of the past, to the first-hand account from the man who witnessed the terrifying event in the Iron Triangle. Allow the witness himself to take us back to that fateful night. My name is Francis P. Wall. The event I am about to recount to you is the truth. So help me God. It happened in the early spring of 1951. We were with the United States Army Infantry. I was in the 25th Division, 27th Regiment, 2nd Battalion, Easy Company. We were in the area designated on military maps as the Iron Triangle near Chorwon. It was nighttime, and we were positioned on the side of a mountain amidst ravines running down into the valley below. To our north was a Korean village. Military records from the Korean War era, though often classified or incomplete, occasionally contain reports of unusual incidents that defy conventional explanation. And this is one such case. As Private First Class Wall recounted, they had previously sent men into the village to warn the inhabitants to evacuate. The reason was clear: in the context of war, the area was about to endure an intense artillery barrage. And on that fateful night, the order was executed. Artillery began raining fire down onto the village, clusters of airburst artillery rounds exploded above the rooftops, creating a familiar scene of destruction with the imposing mountain range as a backdrop behind them. Then abruptly to their right, an anomalous sight appeared. It resembled a giant jack-o'-lantern drifting lazily down the mountainside. The soldiers' initial reaction was a question filled with astonishment and confusion. What the hell is that? Initially, no one really gave it much thought, perhaps assuming it was just a strange optical phenomenon amidst the smoke and fire of the battlefield. The object continued its descent toward the village, where artillery shells were exploding continuously. The impossible happened. It flew directly into the focal point of an airburst artillery explosion. It moved quickly enough to glide from one explosion to the next, as if it could precisely predict the location and timing of the artillery detonations, moving to that exact spot the instant the destruction occurred. An ability that defies every law of physics we know. And even more astonishingly, despite repeatedly flying into the epicenter of these explosions, the object remained entirely intact, completely unharmed. They observed this strange object for approximately 45 minutes to an hour, hovering over the village, maneuvering amidst the rain of artillery shells. It's important to remember that at that time, with the limited technology of the 1950s, identifying fast-moving or unconventional aerial phenomena was extremely difficult, and military doctrine had no established procedures for dealing with such targets. Afterwards, this object began moving toward their position. The light emanating from it began to pulse, following a strange rhythm. Its color shifted from orange to a brilliant, dazzling bluish green as it drew closer. Finally, it stopped hovering directly above them. Private First Class Wall estimated it was only about 30 feet away, directly overhead. As the object approached, Private First Class Wall requested permission to open fire. Lieutenant Evans, the company commander at the time, granted the request. Wall raised his M1 rifle loaded with armor-piercing rounds and opened fire. He hit it. A distinct metallic sound was clearly heard as the bullet impacted the object's surface. An immediate question arose. Why could a rifle bullet produce that sound? While heavy artillery shells had no effect, Wall speculated, could its protective shield have been temporarily lowered at that precise moment? Immediately following Wall's shot, everyone simultaneously opened fire with every weapon they had. But strangely, after that initial round, there were no further impacts. Only Wall's single shot seemed to have reached it. The reason it was speculated was that its defense system had been momentarily lowered, and when Wall's bullet connected, that system was instantly reactivated. Afterwards, nothing could touch it anymore. The evidence was clear. Despite unleashing untold amounts of ammunition, there was never another impact sound like that first shot. It was as if their bullets could no longer make physical contact with the object's surface. As soon as Wall's bullet struck, the object began to react violently. Its light pulsed continuously, then extinguished completely for a brief moment. It moved erratically, rocking from side to side as if about to lose control and crash into the ground. Then they heard a sound. Something entirely absent before it was a sound resembling a diesel locomotive, revving its engine, a deep, heavy roar as if it was attempting to restart, trying to recover from the impact of the bullet. And then they were attacked. Private First Class Wall used that term. Perhaps no word is more accurate. Somehow they were swept by some form of energy beam. It was emitted in waves and pulses. The strange thing was, one could only see the beam with the naked eye when it shone directly on them. Like a sweeping searchlight beam, you only register the shaft of light when it's pointed directly at you. A burning, numbing sensation spread through the soldiers' bodies. It felt like something was penetrating their skin and flesh, an invisible and horrifying intrusion. Lieutenant Evans, the company commander, reacted extremely quickly, immediately ordering everyone to withdraw into nearby bunkers. They didn't know what was going to happen next. Fear gripped them all. These were shelters dug deep underground, with small apertures for observing and firing back at the enemy. Private First Class Wall and another comrade took position in their bunker, holding their breath as they peered out through the aperture. The object remained hovering directly above them for some time longer, its strange light illuminating a vast area, transforming the dark night into a ghostly stage. Then Wall witnessed it shoot away at a 45-degree angle. Impossibly fast, it was there and then vanished in the blink of an eye. For a moment, it felt like everything was over, but a profound sense of unease remained. Military reports from various conflicts have also documented unexplained energy weapons or directed energy phenomena, although often lacking concrete evidence or official explanations. But the horrifying event did not end there. 3 days later, a serious medical crisis erupted. The entire company, all the men who had been present that night, mysteriously fell ill. They required urgent evacuation by ambulance. Engineers even had to carve new roads through the treacherous terrain to bring them out. The soldiers became too weak to walk on their own. All were suffering from severe dysentery. When doctors examined them, they discovered something abnormal and alarming. The white blood cell counts in all the patients were drastically elevated, reaching extremely dangerous levels. It was a condition for which the doctors of that era could offer no explanation. Mass outbreaks of illness or unexplained physiological effects following anomalous incidents are not unheard of in military environments, sometimes leading to investigations that conclude without definitive findings. According to standard military procedure, particularly in the Army, a daily company report must be submitted. A private discussion took place among the soldiers who remained conscious and the officers. The question was posed, what should we do about this? Should it be included in the report or not? And the final agreed upon decision was no. The reason was simple and stark. If they reported the truth, they would all be locked away, dismissed as lunatics suffering from delusions. It's important to remember that at that time the concept of UFOs, unidentified flying objects, was virtually unknown to the general public. The soldiers had no idea what they had encountered, and as Private First Class Wall would later admit, he still couldn't fathom what it was. The cultural and institutional climate within the military during the early Cold War often discouraged and sometimes outright suppressed the reporting of unexplained phenomena due to concerns about credibility, troop morale, or the possibility of enemy disinformation. For Francis P. Wall personally, the consequences of that encounter persisted for the rest of his life. Immediately following the incident, he suffered from severe headaches, nausea, and dysentery vomiting, continuously for many days. For several weeks afterward, he had almost no desire to eat, but constantly felt an abnormal thirst. These symptoms were later noted to bear remarkable similarities to those experienced by individuals suffering from radiation poisoning. After partially recovering, Francis ultimately survived the war and returned home to North Carolina. He received an honorable discharge from the Army in June 1952. He recounted that he had lost a significant amount of weight, dropping from 180 pounds down to only 138 pounds upon his return. And ever since, he experienced extreme difficulty in maintaining his weight. The severe headaches continued to recur throughout his life, even after returning home. They were so debilitating that they sometimes forced him to miss work or required emergency room visits. Yet no doctor could provide a satisfactory explanation for the cause of these headaches. He also reported experiencing periods of disorientation and memory loss, dating back to the time of the event. There was even a period lasting 3 days for which he had absolutely no memory of anything that had happened. All of this was purportedly documented in his medical records. These additional symptoms are also similar to those described by other witnesses who have come forward about their own close encounters with similar strange objects. Researching the long-term health effects on military personnel exposed to unknown or unique agents, including potential radiation or strange energy sources, is highly complex and often hampered by a lack of initial data or clear diagnostic markers. Many years later, in 1987, Francis P. Wall participated in his first recorded interview where he shared this horrifying story. The interviewer was John Timberman, project manager for a photo exhibit by the J. Allen Hynek Center for UFO Studies QFOs. When asked if he had told this story to anyone else prior to the interview, Francis chuckled and said, "Oh yes, I told my wife and my children. I've recounted this story to them many times since I came back from Korea. But you know how it is with stories like this." He added, hinting at his family's reaction. They just say, "uh-huh." Then they go on about their business, and that's the end of it. Subsequently, Francis was also contacted by another prominent UFO researcher, Richard F. Haynes. A subsequent interview took place on May 10, 1989. Civilian organizations like the J. Allen Hynek Center and researchers such as Richard F. Haynes play a crucial role in the effort to collect and analyze reports of unexplained aerial phenomena, often focusing on the testimonies of military personnel witnesses. The story of Private First Class Francis Wall, after being recorded, was not relegated to personal files. It was published several years later in 1990 in Richard Haynes' book, titled Advanced Aerial Devices Reported During the Korean War. This underscores the vital role of civilian researchers and organizations, which often become the primary repositories for reports of unexplained aerial phenomena that are not officially acknowledged or investigated by military or governmental bodies. To lend further credence to this already shocking account, it is necessary to consider the witness's military background. Francis Wall was a veteran who participated in both World War II and the Korean War. He became eligible for enlistment in December 1944, serving in the Merchant Marine until the war ended in 1945. Just 5 years later, he transferred to the Army and was sent to fight in Korea. Richard Haynes diligently verified Francis's details, name, rank, service number, and other data. The source for verification was the official Army roster for his unit, the 27th Infantry Regiment, nicknamed the Wolfhounds. Similarly, information regarding Wall's commanding officer, Lieutenant Del G. Evans, was also confirmed through the official roster of Echo Company. Lieutenant Evans was no ordinary officer. He had received numerous medals for bravery and heroism, and was recognized for his outstanding combat qualities and leadership. After the war, Evans continued his military service and worked for U.S. Army intelligence, a field demanding a high level of security clearance and a professional culture of discretion regarding sensitive or unusual incidents. He was involved in planning, organizing, and drafting emergency defense plans for the Army. Evans retired with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in 1970 after 23 years of exemplary service. However, a notable gap exists in this record. No sources have been found indicating that Lieutenant Colonel Del Evans ever mentioned the bizarre encounter that Francis Wall described in such detail. Del Evans passed away in 2004, 5 years after Francis Wall. Efforts were made to contact Evans's family to inquire whether he had ever mentioned anything about this event, but they could not be reached for comment. The silence from a high-ranking officer, particularly one involved in intelligence, could be attributed to several factors: official orders, professional discretion, or simply a personal decision never to discuss the event. The search for additional corroboration of Francis's account faced significant difficulties. By the time the interview took place in the fall of 1987, 36 years had already passed since that terrifying night. Francis understandably could not recall the names of any other men from his unit who were still alive, and could verify his story. The sole exception was Lieutenant Evans, for whom, as we've established, no recorded account exists. After the war, Francis returned to North Carolina. Many of his comrades had perished in subsequent fierce battles in Korea. He recalled that many of them hailed from states on the west coast of the United States. Francis expressed regret at being unable to remember their names, like so many other soldiers, despite forming quick bonds during military service time, and circumstances had caused them to lose touch completely. The psychological impact of combat and trauma can also significantly affect memory recall, particularly specific details, such as names or precise timelines, after many decades have passed. After conducting extensive research into the types of aircraft and capabilities of both the United States and the Soviet Union in the early 1950s, Richard Haynes offered a noteworthy analysis. He declared that no known type of aircraft existed at that time which resembled what Francis Wall had described. When asked what he thought the object was, Francis answered frankly and without hesitation, "An alien spaceship." He elaborated, "It was unlike anything I had ever seen. I believe that these things are real." Previously, Francis had also expressed his belief in a government cover-up. "I think that there is a cover-up going on." The evidence for this belief in his view was clear. "We were ordered not to say anything about this. That indicates they are covering it up." He concluded with a profound philosophical point. "It's foolish to believe that we are the only technology anywhere." The so-called cover-up conspiracy theories surrounding UFO sightings has garnered considerable attention among the public and researchers precisely because official explanations are often perceived as unsatisfactory or dismissive, particularly concerning the testimony of military witnesses. Although there may be no living direct witnesses to fully verify Francis's personal account, Dr. Haynes noted that this close encounter of the first and second kind contains intriguing corroborating data. It has connections to another UFO sighting listed in his book. That separate sighting took place on the night of March 10, 1951, just days or perhaps weeks prior to Wall's event, depending on his precise recollection of early spring. What the hell was that? Hey, everybody see that? Huh. Yeah, I saw it. Anybody else see it? What was that streak of light? I can't tell, sir. I mean, it looked like flares, but what's our altitude, sir? 17,000 feet. What the hell was that? Eddie, it looked like a ball of light, sir. Cross-referencing different reports of unexplained phenomena from the same general time frame and location is a common practice in UAP research, although establishing a definitive link between them remains challenging without official investigative records or multiple independent confirmations. And the corroborating data Dr. Haynes referred to is another encounter occurring just days or weeks before Private First Class Wall's event on the night of March 10, 1951. The primary witness was the left blister observer on a B-29 Superfortress, flying at an altitude of nearly 17,000 feet. They were flying on a heading of 32 degrees northeast at a position 42 miles southwest of Chinampo, Korea. 8 other crew members also caught a glimpse of the same brilliant flash of light, albeit for an extremely brief moment. The night conditions were described as clear and moonless, a perfect backdrop for sky observation, yet also heightening the mystery of what they were about to witness. The primary witness initially saw a dazzling flash of light at his 9 o'clock position. It moved slightly downward and toward the rear of the aircraft. Initially, he reported it as a flare, as he didn't know what it actually was. The phenomenon appeared as a reddish-yellow halo of light. Subsequently, it descended to the aircraft's altitude, then abruptly flared up with a brilliant blue-white light. Its estimated size was around that of a basketball, but this was merely a vague guess. It moved in a straight line without changing its trajectory. No one in the crew could confidently estimate the actual distance or precise size of the object. All estimations were based purely on guesswork. This implies the object could have been significantly larger and farther away than initially perceived. The tail gunner and the bombardier both reported seeing the bluish-green or blue-white flash off the aircraft's right wing, although their positions were not advantageous for directly observing the object. The main pilot also witnessed the object at his 3 o'clock position out of the corner of his eye like a fleeting blue-white or bluish-green flash. Crucially, none of them observed any specific shape, silhouette, exhaust trail, or anything that could help identify this object as a conventional aircraft. It should be noted that military pilots and aircrew are highly trained observers, yet visually identifying unidentified objects at high altitudes and speeds, particularly at night, is inherently difficult and susceptible to misinterpretation. All this information was documented in a report by the United States Air Force Air Staff Message Division. Designation Alpha 5394, dated March 26, 1951. The U.S. Air Force listed this case as unidentified in its Project Blue Book files. However, they also put forward conventional possibilities such as anti-aircraft fire, flak flares, or meteors. A common tendency of Project Blue Book, which prioritized conventional explanations in order to assess potential national security threats or find scientific solutions. So could the object seen by the B-29 crew on March 10th have been the same object that attacked the 27th Regiment at Chorwan? This question remains open to our speculation. However, let's consider the geographical context. The port city of Chinampo lies approximately 90 miles west-northwest of Chorwan. Francis Wall reported that when the UFO departed his location, it ascended rapidly in a westerly direction. The B-29's reported position was flying 42 miles southwest of Chinampo. This means they were at an altitude of 17,000 feet, almost directly west of Chorwan, and they were flying on a northeastern heading 32 degrees. Thus, Francis's position on the ground would be approximately 120 miles to their east, off the aircraft's right wing. Spatially, this is entirely plausible, placing the B-29 in the westward flight path of the UFO, departing at extreme speed. Visually, the fact that the object was detected off the aircraft's right wing, combined with the inability to determine its size and distance in the night sky, also fits perfectly. In terms of observation conditions, the clear sky and the object having to approach the aircraft's position from the east, their right side also align with the facts. One point requires clarification regarding the timing of Francis Wall's event. Many documents recounting his story have mistakenly stated that the event occurred in May 1951. However, the unedited transcript of Francis's 1987 interview in Richard Haynes's book contains no mention of May. Francis himself seemed unable to recall the exact date. He merely stated that the UFO encounter occurred in the early spring. Fortunately, a brief review of the 25th Infantry Division's movement timeline during the war provides us with a more precise estimate of when his unit was present in the Chorwan area. And in fact, that was in March. Allow me to quote a historical record. On March 7th, the 25th Division attacked across the Han River and advanced northward, inflicting heavy losses on the enemy. Historical records of military units and after-action reports are crucial tools for verifying the locations and timelines of events, often helping to resolve discrepancies found in personal recollections decades later. Verifying. Private First Class Wall's precise location and timing at Chorwan further bolsters the credibility of his story and the potential connection to the B-29 encounter. Historical records indicate that in late March 1951, the 25th Division was holding a defensive line above the Hunton River south of Chorwan, approximately 35 miles northeast of Seoul. Wall's unit could not possibly have been in that location in May. This is because on April 22nd, the Chinese forces launched another major offensive, once again pushing the United Nations forces southward. The 25th Division had to withdraw through several successive rearguard positions to a line approximately 5 miles north of Seoul, and they held that position throughout the entire month of May. Barring any exceptional individual movements by Echo Company that might have taken them farther north during this offensive, which is highly improbable. Therefore, March 10, 1951 emerges as an entirely plausible time frame for Francis Wall to have been present in the area near Chorwan. In an astonishing coincidence, that is the very night the B-29 crew witnessed that strange object. The frequent military offensives and defensive actions during the Korean War often resulted in rapid changes in unit positions, making the accurate dating of specific events critical and occasionally challenging when relying solely on personal memory after several decades. This information opens up the possibility that these two separate sightings are in fact intimately connected. It's conceivable they occurred almost simultaneously within the same short time frame. A scenario emerges: the B-29 crew witnessed the object as it streaked westward into the sky, immediately after attacking Francis's infantry company. The description of the object, initially appearing with an orange or reddish-yellow light, then shifting to a blue-white light, also aligns remarkably well in both accounts. Naturally, this is merely speculation based on the fragmented data, available shards of a larger, more unsettling picture. But if they were not the same objects seen on the same night or even on different nights, then that becomes even more disturbing. It would imply that there were at least two separate but identical objects operating within the same theater of war. Indeed, the number of documented UFO sightings during the Korean War is quite remarkable. In the period from September 1950 to the winter of 1954, more than 63 military pilots, soldiers, ground radar operators, Navy personnel, and others reported seeing over 40 unidentified flying objects in the skies over Korea. With the war lasting just over 3 years, that equates to at least one UFO sighting each month, an alarming frequency within a relatively small and closely monitored geographical area. And the nagging question persists: how many other servicemen and women witnessed something similar but never bothered to report it? Fearing ridicule, disciplinary action, or simply not wanting to confront such absurdity. The Korean War represented one of the first large-scale instances where advanced military technology and highly concentrated manpower converged in a specific geographical region during a period of heightened global tension, potentially increasing both the probability of encountering anomalous phenomena and the sensitivity surrounding their reporting. Coupled with events occurring within the United States, such as the Mantell UFO incident and other UFO sightings over American military bases around the time of World War II, the sheer volume of UFO reports from the U.S. military during the Korean War appears to have been the catalyst prompting the U.S. government to seriously investigate these types of incidents. The explicit objective was to evaluate what might constitute a potential military threat. The U.S. Air Force established the top-secret Project Blue Book in March 1952, just 1 year after the events at Chorwan and the B-29 incident. Francis Wall's conviction that the majority of these reported events have long been concealed from the public is certainly not an isolated one. His comments on this matter were made in 1987, and 30 years later, recent disclosures regarding military secrets related to UFOs or UAP, the current terminology, have certainly done nothing to diminish the long-standing suspicions held by him and many others. A BBC article from January 2023 indicated that newly declassified U.S. government documents reveal that hundreds of U.S. military personnel have seen and reported UFO SUAPs, signifying that this is hardly an anomalous occurrence. Although several of the more than 40 reported UFO sightings over Korea are as noteworthy as Private First Class Wall's story, and we will have to cover those in future episodes, none seem to achieve the same level of proximity or provide details as unique and terrifying as his close encounter. However, and for me, this is precisely where the story becomes truly chilling. The story of Private First Class Francis P. Wall and his men at Chorwan, Korea, with its bizarre diesel engine sound and horrifying physiological effects, already constitutes a shocking and haunting record. But what makes it even more terrifying, ladies and gentlemen, are its echoes. Seemingly unrelated events that bear uncanny similarities occurring decades later in an entirely different location. Join me as we travel back in time, but this time to a more recent era, to the banks of the Columbia River north of Portland, Oregon. In the early morning hours of March 17, 1981, precisely at 4:03 a.m., Sergeant Russell Yoakum of the St. Helens Police Department was on patrol along Highway 30 west of the Columbia River. He spotted a brilliant light moving eastward toward the Portland Airport located upstream. Aircraft frequently flew through this area, but this light was different, unnaturally bright. It illuminated the entire river as if the sun had just risen, the whole area surrounding the object as bright as daylight. I thought it was aircraft landing lights, but it was much brighter than normal landing lights, Yoakum recounted at the National Enquirer in 1981. He quickly became convinced it was not a conventional aircraft. Yoakum radioed his headquarters, then drove to the county courthouse where he could get a clearer view of the unidentified flying object from the bank of the Columbia River. In the early 1980s, public and media interest in UFOs persisted, fueled by earlier government studies and well-known incidents, even though formal investigations like Project Blue Book had concluded. At the riverbank, a few local residents and 2 Oregon State police officers, Ricky Cade and Tom McCartney, joined Yoakum. Via CB radio, Yoakum managed to contact a man named Donald Askins, handle Lucky 13, who lived in a house across the river in Ridgefield, Washington. Askins not only saw the light but also heard its sound. He reported a bizarre and extremely loud noise sounding like a power plant diesel engine, accompanied by intermittent piercing screeches. This sound was eerily reminiscent of the diesel engine noise that Private First Class Wall and his comrades had heard in Korea 30 years earlier. The police officers quickly positioned a portable tape recorder 18 inches away from their police radio, hoping to record the conversation with Askins and capture the sound itself should it reappear. Askins even offered to hang his CB microphone out his house window to directly transmit the strange sound over the radio waves. The officers then drove up to a nearby bluff for a better vantage point, while the rudimentary technology of the era, CB radios and cassette tape recorders, became the sole instruments for recording evidence of this unusual event. And here's that audio recording, a chilling sonic fragment from that night. Lucky we got a sitting close to the radio anytime now. Be standing by. Yeah, we'll let her roll. If it starts up again, just key up and get a little bit of it. Just didn't want to think we all fell asleep. Hey TS, all it is just an orange glow now. That's all I can see. Okay, that's all you see from there. You guys are still observing over on the other side of the river. Yes, sir. Just orange. Where'd it go? Out on the river or something? Did the sun just come up? Better not have too early. Too early for the sun. Joe, I don't think the sun sits in one spot either. I think it's moving away, fellas. Then at approximately 4:29 a.m., that object began emitting the strange sound once more. Sounds like it's revving up. Can you hear that? I hope so. Get this down. Fellas. Yeah, we're listening. To me, sounds like power plant diesel engines, and it's got piercing screeches mixed into it. Okay, yeah, it is now 4:29 a.m. Just for the record. This audio recording, with its fragmented dialogue and described sound, provides unique evidence allowing us to directly analyze the real-time reactions and descriptions of the witnesses as they confronted the inexplicable. The climax of the event occurred at 4:43 a.m. A dense fog unexpectedly enveloped them, swirling in from the river's surface, creating a suffocating, isolating sensation. Then the brilliant orange light suddenly extinguished. One officer recounted that the light produced a strange whistling sound right before it vanished. Afterward, it sounded as if it shot straight up and went away. Officer McCartney recalled when speaking to the Inquirer. And even more bizarrely, within just 30 seconds of the object's disappearance, the dense fog rapidly dissipated, parting to reveal the brightening, clear sky. The officer's reaction could be summed up in one word: unnerved. Sudden localized changes in atmospheric conditions, such as fog rapidly forming or dissipating, are sometimes informally associated with certain UAP sightings, although scientists typically seek natural explanations for such phenomena. Throughout the event, the state police were in contact with the U.S. Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard confirmed they too had detected the object on their radar. Radar confirmation from an independent agency like the Coast Guard added a significant layer of official corroboration to the visual and auditory testimonies of the witnesses, providing data points that transcend subjective observation. The investigation into the 1981 Columbia River encounter did not end there. Sergeant Yoakum's police department also contacted the Portland airport. Initially, the airport confirmed having seen the object on their radar screens, but within just 5 minutes, a perplexing event unfolded. The airport abruptly called the police station back and completely denied the information they had previously provided. A sudden reversal of position, a mysterious retraction of confirmation, raising questions about whether information was being concealed, a disturbingly recurring motif in some UAP incidents. Later, Dr. J. Allen Hynek had the audio recording analyzed at his Center for UFO Studies in Chicago, Illinois Acoustics. Experts concluded that the recorded sound was unlike any sound they had ever encountered in nature, and they stated definitively that it was not the sound of a helicopter. So, what was that sound? And does it bear a chilling familiarity to the description of a revving diesel locomotive engine provided by Private First Class Francis Wall from his close encounter in Korea? An encounter that took place 30 years prior, and bizarrely occurred on nearly the same day in March. Recall the description from the 1981 witness. Sounds like power plant diesel engines, and it's got piercing screeches mixed into it. The recurrence of specific unusual details, such as unique sounds or light characteristics across multiple UAP reports separated by time and location, is considered by some researchers as potential evidence for unconventional phenomena, like ghostly echoes reverberating through time and space. To gain a deeper understanding of the weight carried by Private First Class Wall's testimony, we need to look at his life after the war. Francis Wall retired in 1969 at the relatively young age of just 42. His daughter Renee Denny stated that he spent the subsequent 30 years unemployed, grappling with the severe lingering effects of the war. These were the kind of emotional wounds often overlooked in that era, but which today would very likely be diagnosed as a severe form of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. He was particularly triggered by the sound of airplanes. On one occasion, he panicked to the point of shoving both his mother and his sister to the ground after mistaking them for enemy soldiers during a sudden flashback. I guess he was having a flashback, his daughter recounted. She also related another story from the battlefield at night when Francis had to navigate through a dense minefield in pitch darkness, knowing only to pray for his life with every single step. Some of his comrades were not as fortunate. A sudden explosion, horrifying screams echoing in his memory. When he enlisted, his daughter said he was happy-go-lucky, carefree, a completely different person compared to the man he was when he returned. The long-term psychological impacts of combat, including PTSD and vivid flashbacks, are well-documented phenomena that can profoundly affect a veteran's life long after they have completed their military service. However, amidst the painful and sometimes fragmented memories of war, there was one story that Francis Wall recounted repeatedly throughout the years. That was the story of his bizarre UFO encounter. His daughter affirmed, "The story was always exactly the same. It never changed over the years." Perhaps unlike other traumatic experiences that might become distorted by time and psychological defense mechanisms, Francis's memory of the UFO encounter remained exceptionally consistent and vivid, as if it had been indelibly etched into his mind. The aggregate of these vivid memories from Korea, whether of battle or the extraordinary encounter, clearly became a tragic burden that weighed heavily on Francis's mind until his death in 1999. If his story is true, skeptics can only offer the argument that what Francis witnessed might have been a severe hallucination, the attributed cause being the fog of war. The mental strain experienced by soldiers engaged in intense combat and enduring an overwhelming sense of uncertainty akin to being lost in a fog. But frankly, that seems an overly superficial, overly simplistic explanation for an experience as vivid, detailed, and possessing such clear physical consequences as Francis described. However, that is also precisely why stories of this nature were selected for our fog of war theme. They are reminiscent of uncanny encounters on the level of the Twilight Zone. And indeed, many of the stories in the Twilight Zone penned by Rod Serling were inspired by his own combat experiences and the terrible things he witnessed while serving as an American paratrooper fighting in the Philippines during World War II. But unlike Rod Serling's skillfully crafted dramas, these fog of war stories are not intended to be perceived as works of fiction. Whether we choose to believe them or not, the individuals who have shared their stories on this channel, like Francis Wall, all insist that these were genuine encounters with UFOs. The concept of the fog of war is a long-standing military term describing the uncertainty in situational awareness experienced by participants in military operations, and it is sometimes extended by skeptics to encompass psychological effects such as hallucinations under extreme duress. Of course, many UFO sightings often turn out to be cases of misidentification. Even under the calmest circumstances far removed from the psychological stresses of combat, people can still be mistaken. It might be a balloon, an insect, a cloud, a drone, or a conventional aircraft flying past. So what was the object that Francis Wall saw on that fateful night at such close range? And the dozens of other military personnel during the Korean War who reported similar objects. What did they see? Can we readily dismiss all of them as liars or as delusional men simultaneously suffering from identical hallucinations? As Francis pointed out, reporting bizarre and incredible encounters such as this has long carried more potential for harm than benefit. It could certainly destroy both the reputation and the career of a man in the military. In that case, how many other men and women have chosen to remain silent about what they witnessed? Even with verified sightings from the military and other reports concerning these truly bizarre objects stretching back decades, perhaps even hundreds or thousands of years depending on how we interpret history, the fear of ridicule and professional repercussions remains a tangible barrier to the truth. Regrettably, the true nature of these objects and their exact origins continue to elude us, shrouded in a fog of uncertainty and latent fear. This is one of the most remarkable UFO stories I have encountered or read about to date. I have watched other videos covering this story. They didn't seem to delve deeply into Francis's life, what his family said about the event, or the psychological weight it carried. Coupled with the two corroborating events, particularly the 1981 incident at the Columbia River, which offered concrete evidence, it makes it very difficult for me not to lend credence to Francis's account, no matter how bizarre his story may be. That event yielded audio evidence supporting the existence of this strange type of flying vehicle. The witnesses in Washington, 3 men discussing it over the radio. They were not out of their minds. They were not insane. They saw what they saw, and they managed to record a portion of it. This, while not offering direct proof, makes it significantly more difficult to completely dismiss Francis's story, simply because he didn't have a video camera back in 1951. Evaluating historical witness testimony in the absence of modern recording technology often relies heavily on the consistency of the account, the apparent sincerity of the witness, and any potential corroboration from other sources or subsequent events. So, what are your thoughts on this story? Please let me know your opinions in the comments section below. And if you are aware of any other similar stories or perhaps things you have witnessed yourself, I would very much like to hear about them. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. And there are many more stories on the way. And thank you to everyone who has emailed me, sharing your personal stories. I have received those emails. I apologize for the delay in responding to. Let you know that I have received them. I will try to do better with this. It's just that I typically prefer to send a thoughtful response and actually take the time to read your story and reply to it, rather than just sending a quick email saying, "Hey, I received your story, I'll get back to you later." But with the growing volume of emails coming in, I think I might have to adjust my process slightly, so I will go through them and let you know that I have received your emails. But please understand if I cannot provide a lengthy and detailed response right away. I will see you all in the next episode.